everyone, and welcome to Kinship Connects, a podcast from SDA Kinship, where we invite you to join with us as we share our stories and our journeys. My name is Floyd Konitz, and today it is my great privilege to speak with Michelle Bowman. Thank you for joining us and sharing with us. Been looking forward to this.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for having me. Sorry, I didn't warn you, but do you mind if I do an acknowledgement of country?
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's great. Sure.
Which I'm going to wing because I normally have it written down when I'm starting sort of meetings, but I do think that it's important to acknowledge the First Nations of the land that we're meeting on. So I acknowledge the Darug Nation as the local custodians of the land that I'm on today, and I give my respects to their elders past and present.
Great. Thank you. That is important. Thank you so much. Yeah, with time zones and stuff, we've had a little bit of a challenge figuring out when you're awake and when I'm awake.
Yes, so we got there.
Where are you now? What part of the world are you in?
I'm in Sydney. So the Darug Nation is the land of the Western Sydney sort of region. So I am not by any means living on the beach. It takes about an hour to get to the beach for me, which is still, I guess, close compared to many others. Okay. I have been living in this part of Western Sydney for just slightly, like it's a month longer than 15 years. I moved here in January 2008. Okay. So originally from what part? That's a loaded question, Floyd.
Okay.
My family is white South African. I was born in Zimbabwe. I spent much of my formative childhood years living in the UK. So shout out to Newbold, to the people who know Newbold. And I moved to Australia when I was the day before my 15th birthday. So I've been here since I was 15. Cool.
So I'm trying to figure out the trek from south to north to way down under.
South again, yes. Yes,
cool.
Traversed, yes. So I've lived, again, another shout out to Avondale. I was in the Avondale area as a teen. Then I moved to the eastern suburbs of Sydney for my university years, down to Melbourne for a great year to do my postgraduate studies, and then back up to Western Sydney. Okay.
So cool. So mostly always in New South Wales, right?
Yeah, with the exception of the year in Melbourne, I've been in New South Wales while I've been in this country.
Okay. Cool. That's the fun thing about what I do. When I get to talk to people, I'm getting my geography in line of where everything is located. So yeah. So did you grow up Adventist? From an Adventist family? Because you've been named all these Adventist places. Yes.
Very, very Adventist upbringing. On my mum's side, Adventist for many generations. If people know of the Websters, then they know my family. So there's a few Websters out there in the US and in South Africa. That's my mum's side.
Great. So I'm intrigued with the South Africa part, or Zimbabwe. Had your family been there for a while?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Pretty many. Yeah. Multiple generations in South Africa as white people. But yes, so a strong connection to Southern Africa. We were in Zimbabwe when I was born, again, because of Adventist education system. My parents were working at the Adventist college there called Selusi.
Okay. So what took you to UK then?
Adventist education.
That's what I thought.
Yep. No, all of our moves have been very much around my parents' work within the higher education system for the church. So from Helderberg in South Africa to Selusi in Zimbabwe to Newbold in the UK to Avondale in Australia. That's my upbringing, my childhood.
Okay, great. And siblings? Did you grow up with a large family or?
I've got one older sister who has been living in the UK for the last 17, 18 years, something like that. So we see each other, she and her husband and her kid, as often as we can, but it's obviously been challenging in the last few years to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good thing about Zoom and FaceTime and stuff like that now. We have these wonderful tools. We can almost be there in person. So,
Yes,
so
it
yeah,
definitely is better.
yeah. Great. So you are an ally of Kinship, is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah.
And of course, I had to wear my Ally Cat t-shirt
Oh, I
today.
like that. Oh, yeah, that's great. That is great. Perfect. So, yeah, when did LGBTQ, this alphabet soup, rainbow, whatever, come onto your radar? When did you first hear about that?
Um, I've reflected on this a number of times in the past, and one of the things I guess to say is that I don't remember any particular thought about it. I wasn't really, I guess I wasn't fed any information in particular by my family growing up or by the church community that I was in growing up. It just wasn't on my radar, which of course is straight privilege. But when I was probably 14, 15, one of my friends got into a same-sex relationship and didn't cause me any second thought still at that time. I was just like, cool, okay, that's great.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're happy.
Cool.
But somewhere in that sort of next year or two, I guess, I became aware, probably partly through what they told me and also just partly through what I started hearing about as a young adult in the church, was the church's stance on this. And okay. Along with some other things going on with the church that I was attending at that time, so towards the end of high school here in Australia, when I moved out of home and started getting into the workforce and into higher education, I basically stopped going to church, partly because I guess you could summarize it as saying I was pretty disillusioned with the church as an organization. And a big part of that was the fact that it just didn't sit right with me that there was this kind of persecutory kind of thought about this particular minority in society. It just didn't make sense to me. Without having delved into theology in any way, it just didn't sit right with me.
Right. It was a gut feeling that it was like, yep. Why?
Yeah. Why? Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, was that before you were married with your husband?
Yeah. So that was the end of high school. Really, I was very involved in my home church during those last few years of high school. One of the leaders in the teen and youth ministry. But then I moved away from the area, moved to work and moved to study. And going back to that church wasn't feasible, really, just from a logistics point of view. And there really wasn't a local church for me at that point in time without traveling a reasonable distance. And I just didn't really want to.
It was just, no appeal, huh?
No. I never stopped believing. I never stopped having faith in Jesus, in God, in all of that stuff. But the church as an institution just really, it didn't sit right with me at that point. It just, I think along the side there, of course, is, finding your feet as a young adult. One of the things that I did when I was at university was study and participate in theatre. So I did a lot of shows, a lot of that kind of stuff, and that also introduced me to a much broader range of people.
Right.
Wonderful people. Many I've kept in close contact with many of my university friends since then. 20 years later, still enjoy catching up and seeing what they're up to. But yeah, there is an overlap there between the LGBTQ list and the theatrical types.
Sure. It's a stereotype, but it's true.
Yeah. But it just built more on that innate, these are people. They're people who deserve all the same everything. And more, I guess, built on my sort of instinct of this isn't a choice. That there are no choices about how you feel about the way that you're attracted to people or the way that you identify. This is just who you are.
Right.
And again, without any real delving into theology, it just didn't sit right to me that a God of love would see that in any other way.
Yeah. Now that's a fairly common story that I hear from lots of people, that their journey took them away from the church, and sometimes it takes them back and sometimes it doesn't. How did your family think of that? Is like, oh, Michelle is like over the deep end, or we're going to pray for her, or it's like, okay, Michelle, find your way, and how did they react?
My parents are, and I know my mum's going to end up watching this at least, maybe not my dad, but hi, Mum. My parents are, I would say, relatively, I don't know, we did Friday night worship together. Sabbath as a day was certainly always in my childhood very much about connecting with other people. We had our found family, our local other sort of teachers and students that we would spend the day with. So I guess being Adventist and having faith was always part of my childhood. Where was I going with this? But it was never like, I never felt like it was being rammed down my throat. There was always flexibility about, I guess, we didn't absolutely have to go to church every single week without fail. We would travel and we would do things on Sabbaths that other people might not have felt comfortable with, 30 years ago, with the sort of more traditional views of things.
Right.
So I don't remember any particular conversations with my parents at any stage, except for the fact that my mum would almost routinely be saying, have you tried such and such a church? Have you given it a go? Sure. I'd go to church with them. If I was visiting them for the weekend, I would go to church with them, but their church was not the church that I had been going to as a teen. So that was, I guess it was a different kind of a feeling. It was, I'm going to church with my parents and this is fine, this is good. But I wouldn't go back to the church that I had been in as a youth.
Right. Yeah. And as a good mom, your mom was a good mom. She didn't push, yes, but it was just gently,
yes,
caring for you. Yeah.
Yes.
That's great.
Yeah.
So you're married now, so I'm assuming you met your husband somewhere along the line here.
I did things the reverse to lots of people in my generation and younger. I did online dating and long distance relationships as a teen and young person. And then I met my husband at church.
Okay. Hey, it worked.
It did. But I remember being teased for my internet boyfriends when I was in the final year of high school, or around, well, not quite the final. No, I actually had a regular in-person boyfriend in the final year of high school, but he was the exception. Yes, no, I got onto online dating before online dating was a thing, and had long distance relationships with people that I did know in person, and some of them were Adventist, some of them were not. I guess if we wanted to talk about my Christian journey, an Anglican boyfriend was actually a key part in my journey back to the church, back to any church.
Right.
But yes, having sort of dated a few people over the years, eventually I went to a new church because I'd moved to the area, because my mum said, your cousin can come pick you up. Why don't you go to church? And I said, thanks, okay.
Yeah.
And so I went to church. Shout out to Shelley if she's watching, my cousin. And I met my husband there.
Okay. Now, is that the church you currently go to, or a different one?
Yes, it is. Yes,
okay.
It is.
Okay. So we're gonna transition then over to, how did you hear about Kellyville? Right. That's where you're going now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we are members of Kellyville. My husband's been a member since birth, basically. Well, not quite.
Okay.
Not
So,
quite.
yeah.
He started attending in childhood, but yeah. So he's a long time Kellyvillian.
Right.
I'm the import, so I started attending there. In fact, what is today's date? Almost precisely 15 years ago.
Wow.
It was the Sabbath after Valentine's Day, 15 years ago, that I first went to Kellyville.
Wow.
And I literally, as I mentioned just before, I literally went to Kellyville because my third cousin was the volunteer pastor there at the time. And my mum said, Shelley can pick you up. You should go to church.
Okay.
And I said, okay. So
Okay.
I kind of fell into it more than seeking it out
Good.
in any way.
Yeah. So how was Kellyville different than all the other churches?
Having not really attended anywhere regularly during my time in my undergrad, I was really quite distanced from regular attendance and any kind of environment of any sort of type of church. When I moved from Sydney to Melbourne, so the year before I started going to Kellyville, I was in Melbourne. I'd been dating this Anglican, somewhat long distance because he lived on the other side of Australia. But he'd really encouraged me in my faith. And one of the questions that he had said to me was, you know, what's stopping you from going back to church? And can I connect you with some people that I know and you can go to their church? And I went, does Sabbath still mean something to me? And going to church on a Sunday just didn't sit right.
Yeah.
Born and bred Adventist.
Right.
I hadn't let that go.
You. I understand.
Yeah. So I did my own research and I found a church in Melbourne that I could get to on public transport because I didn't have a car. It wasn't easy from where I was. And it actually turned out to be an incredibly conservative, quite old school church. Where I remember a young woman getting in a bit of trouble one day because she wore something that was ever so slightly too revealing for some people's sensibilities. I met some lovely people there. And again, I'm still in touch with some of those people, but and I think it served its purpose for me spiritually that year in the sense that there was a degree of comfortableness. I knew what to expect. I could walk in the door. There was the wooden thing on the wall with the hymn numbers for the day. You know, it followed the formula that I'd grown up with. And I think at that point that actually suited me very well. But I wouldn't have been able to keep going to a church like that really once it got down to it, because many of the people there, at least, would not have agreed with how I felt about certain issues. But anyway, I left Melbourne. I came back to Sydney. I landed myself in Kellyville, and I kind of see that as, in many ways, divine intervention in landing me where I needed to be. Landing me as part of the community that was already on a journey that was an accepting and welcoming journey, landing me somewhere where I met the best person I could have married, and giving me the community and the support that I needed for my own spiritual life, and seeing me through some somewhat tumultuous years of my career, but having that community to fall back on. So I think the timing it worked out perfectly.
Awesome. Yeah. So was Pastor Martin the pastor there at that time already?
Yeah. Yes.
He must have just come about that same time, huh?
Yeah, I think he'd been there for just a few years before I started attending.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's about right.
Okay. And yeah, so again, you felt an openness there that you could resonate with and is like, okay, I can be accepted and welcomed here.
Yes. There was a good group of young people my age that I basically arrived with my cousin going, hi, I'm here. And not really giving them any choice but to kind of go, okay.
Yeah.
But no, they were really welcoming. For a good, let me think, a good 2 or 3 months there, I didn't have a car. And this part of Sydney, to get around without a car is really, really hard.
Sure.
So I was getting lifts to church regularly from people that I barely knew.
Okay.
So in fact, that very first Sabbath, it wasn't even my cousin who picked me up. It was one of the other pastors that came and picked me up because she wasn't available. But she made it happen. And then she deliberately introduced me to people, and people who lived nearby could easily come and pick me up. And we clicked. We clicked.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't shy about saying anything about me and what I believed in and things that mattered to me when it came up, which included a conversation, more than one conversation with my now husband, where he, if I am allowed to digress onto his story a bit, but he is a fairly stereotypical ally story where he had grown up with particular beliefs but had never really examined them. But what he does really, really well to this day is keeps an open mind. And if he is presented with new information, he will give consideration. And in fact, if anyone wants to talk theology of acceptance and being able to really understand, I guess, the love that is there for everyone and why the Bible shouldn't be used the way that it can be used, he's the one I direct people to now, because he's put the time and effort in, because I poked him and said, no, this is not, no, they're not choosing this. This is what people are. This is how we just have to love and accept them. And he did a complete about face. But yeah, I guess there was a degree of me coming back to the church and going, you know what, I've got issues with this organization. I still have issues with this organization, but I need a community that connects on certain levels. And Kellyville just has been it. And so now, as you know, as a unit, as parents of children raising and thinking about careers, we don't want to leave this area, because we know that a community like Kellyville is going to be really, really hard to find anywhere else. And that's special.
Yeah. No, I think you hit the nail on the head when you talked about community. Definitely, because theology is one thing. We're spoon-fed theology from cradle roll onward, and so we know theology, but we don't know, or we need the community. You can't do community on your own. And so no, that's very important. So your husband and your kids go to school there? Is that?
No, we've sent our kids to our local school, so the state school system, so I can walk 10 minutes down the road and pick them up, which is very nice. Good. We did spend quite a bit of time agonizing over whether we would send them to the Adventist school, which is connected with our church, but we opted to send them to, they're only little, so the local school is what we opted to do. And again, that came down to community. We wanted to meet the local parents. We wanted to be part of the community that's on our doorstep. We wouldn't have been able to connect with that community if we had been driving 15 minutes to drop them off at school over there. Right.
Exactly. So, and that's important, getting out of the Adventist bubble or ghetto or whatever, and being witnessing and just being part of the community where you live. That is important.
Because I'm not comfortable with anything that involves deliberate evangelism to, door knocking or any that's not me. But I will build relationships with people, and I think in a weird way, one of my proudest moments, if I'm allowed to be proud about something, is when one of my colleagues at work looked at me and said, "You're a really unusual Christian, aren't you, Michelle?" Yes.
That's a compliment, I think.
It's a compliment to me. I'm proud of that.
Good.
And if I can sow some seeds in some minds to say, you know what, Christianity isn't necessarily the picture that you might have of it. If you can see a glimpse of a Jesus that is loving and welcoming and just wants the best for everyone, then that's what I want to be able to do in life.
Good. So Kellyville went through a series called Building Bridges. Were you
Yes.
there for that series?
I was, yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That was really good.
Did that change a lot of opinions and minds of people that maybe were on the fence, or how did that happen? Yeah.
I don't know. So Martin set that up. It was obviously something on his heart. And it was, if I remember correctly, we had just gotten married. No, I was pregnant, I think. So it was a couple of years after we got married. And at that point, I guess I hadn't had a lot of conversations come up spontaneously, but it was, that was a moment again where I really was like, this is a good church to be in. But the people, I think many of the people that I had fallen in with being friends with, just because of our age, most of them were on the same wavelength. Good. Most of them, not all of them. But I probably can't comment on just how much of a difference that program made across the whole of the church body.
Right.
Aside from, I guess, thinking about the fruit that we have seen over the 10 years since, in terms of the fact that the church does open its doors very widely, and many people have come and managed to find community with us where they haven't been able to find community elsewhere.
Good. Well, I spoke with your pastor, Pastor Martin, and checked out his journey a little bit about where he came from, and the process that he went through with Kellyville and his stance. So what we're going to do is just splice that into our interview at this point, and let our listeners hear from Pastor Martin what that journey actually was. So, hello and welcome, everyone. I've been talking with Michelle Bowman about her journey as an ally and attending the Kellyville Church. And I think this is a good time to put in a little bit from the pastor of the Kellyville Church, Martin Vukmanic.
Yeah.
Does that work?
That works very well. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Well, Pastor Martin, tell us a little bit about yourself. You're currently in Australia. Is that correct?
Yeah, I've been currently in Australia for the last 19 years.
Wow. Okay.
The deal was that I would come only for 2 years and go back. Most of my ministry, all of my ministry has been done either in Sweden or Australia. And so when I came to Australia, I was ready to, be here for 2 years and go back to Sweden, but obviously that hasn't happened yet.
The Lord had other plans for you. Yeah. Exactly. So let's jump back a little bit. Tell me about your Adventist history. Are you growing up Adventist, or did you convert at some point?
Yeah, look, I don't have Adventist roots. In fact, my family was anti-Christian to start with. My dad had a very bad experience with the Catholic Church, especially with the Catholic priest, not sexually abused, but being beaten because he couldn't recite certain passages of the catechism and so on. So he decided when he grows up, there will be no religion in the house, and there will be no church attendance. And so, it was later in my teen years that I started asking existential questions. Why are we here? What is this all about? Are we really just squeezed between the birth and death, and that's it? And so on. And that led me to start exploring, reading lots of different books, not just Christian books. Eventually led me to ask a difficult question at that time, and that is, who is Jesus? And the question about Christianity, which in its term led me to actually explore a lot of different Christian churches,
right?
And find out that Adventists are the church that is trying to follow as close as possible the early church beliefs and the New Testament teaching as expressed by Jesus and his disciples. So, I became an Adventist. I'm very proud to be an Adventist. I feel like I would never leave an Adventist church, but that doesn't mean that I align totally on everything what the general conference says or so on. But I'm still very proud to be, working for the church, working in the mission of the people, and just extending God's kingdom and love of Jesus.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. I like to hear that. That means you didn't have a lot of the baggage as a kid growing up in an Adventist community. And
no.
So that
not
that
at all. And I studied at Newbold College in England, theology. And actually, it was a fantastic place to study in the 80s. It was a place where there was a lot of open discussion. As you would remember, that was after the Glacier View. And it wasn't just one way or highway, but it was like we were discussing very openly and understanding the journey of Adventist Church. And this is, I think, a lot of people are struggling. They actually don't understand that the church is growing in revelation and experience and truth about Jesus. I mean, truth is, is revealed to us, to every generation. And so that made me very open-minded, if I can use that term, and understand that it's not just black and white. And another thing I have to say, that made me understand that we Adventists don't know everything. And don't have answer to everything. And you know what? It's okay not to have answer.
It is definitely. Yeah. And truth keeps being revealed as we journey along and understand things more. So I love hearing that. So you said Sweden. What positions or what jobs did you have, or where did you pastor in Sweden?
Obviously, in Sweden, I pastored a number of churches, then eventually ended up in a conference and then in union. I was, the last job I was doing church planting, coordinating different church plants. I think at that time, there were about 19 church plants in Sweden. And I was kind of headhunted or asked to come to Australia. As I mentioned before, I was thinking this is a good mission, 2-year mission project, and for different reasons, I stayed longer than that. Good deal. So now you're at Kellyville, or have you always been at Kellyville since the time? I have always been at Kellyville. I had helped some other church plants in the beginning, but I let go church planting at a conference. And this is what I was also asked to come and sort of coordinate. And the reason I let that go is because the Kellyville Church in itself has embarked on a journey to start a school, to sell the church, to build a new church. And I've been honored to be part of that journey. Awesome. Yeah. And speaking with Michelle and other of your congregants there, I've heard lots of wonderful things about Kellyville and the journey that it's been on to be a more open, affirming, welcoming congregation to everyone, not only just LGBT, but to whoever needs a safe place to be. So could you tell me a little bit about how was it that open and affirming when you first got there? And what was the journey you've been on? Look, I have, when I came, the church consisted of 2 different worship services, and it's maybe hard for me to say where they were in that sort of, where they were positioning themselves in that question. But I know very early when I came to Australia, I was listening to, media, the news and reports, and I found out something that I was not even aware of. And that is that gay people were pushed off the cliff near the Bondi Beach in the
Wow.
70s and 80s. I don't know if you knew that.
No. So you're serious here.
Yes,
Yeah.
and that kind of led me to ask a question: what happened and why, and what happened to Adventists? Are there any gay people in Adventism? Of course they are, and you know, are they embraced? And I don't know how, but that led me to some people got in contact with me, and we started talking about that. And I was basically just on a journey of learning with them.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I realized very quickly, and that was that that today's culture, especially in Australia, is changing. But in that process, a lot of people have been hurt. And hurt comes, the way I describe it is that a lot of gay people have been pushed aside or misunderstood or hated or mistreated, first by their families, then in schools and workplace. And I got to know their stories, and I understood the last nail in that coffin was to be rejected by the church.
Yeah.
And that hurt me. And I said, no, we need to do something about it. We need to do something about it without answering the theological question. I saw it more as a pragmatical question. And so I said, look, let's just put theology aside. Let's not get into discussion of what does Bible says and what does Bible doesn't or does not say. And let's just love people and take care of them. And so we organized a preaching series that was called it was something with bridges. We were doing a preaching series on how Jesus treated people who were on the fringes of society.
Right.
And so one part of that series was LGBTQI people, right? And so we asked Andy Marin from Chicago to come. We had a conference Friday, Saturday, Sunday. At that time, this is about 12 to 15 years ago, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
Yeah, the series was called Building Bridges.
Okay.
Building Bridges, yes.
Right, good.
Building bridges with different, people. And so we organized that conference, and we showed a couple of movies. I think one was called Seventh-day Adventist Gay. Is that?
Seventh-day Adventists.
Seven
it was a play
Adventist,
on the word, Seventh.
Yeah. And we showed that to the church and some other people, and it was at that time that we, as a church, decided and proclaimed that we are going to be a safe place for LGBTQI society. They are welcome to our church, and we will extend our love to them as much as we know and can, without really going into the theological question, without really judging them, without putting them aside, because a lot of churches have become more and more open, and you probably know more about it than me, because I'm not really involved in this question on a global level.
Right.
And I cannot answer the question theologically on a global level, because I know church is a complicated organization that doesn't deal only with that question. There's a question of ordination, there's a question of some other theological issues and so on. But I said to myself, I can solve that question on a local church level.
Right.
I can be pragmatic. I can open the doors, and we can embrace these people and love them and treat them with honorably like anyone else.
Yeah.
And so that led to the point where they are not just welcome to sit in the pews. They're actually welcome to serve as well.
Wow.
If they wish so.
Awesome. Yeah.
If they wish so.
Yeah, that is great. So how big is the congregation there usually?
Well, look, the congregation our membership is about 450.
Okay.
But obviously the attendance numbers are less, especially now after COVID.
Sure.
But we will get, a couple of hundred. So, yeah.
Right. Great. I looked at the website. It looks like you have lots of programming for children and families and just a lot, a lot going on there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Our church building is open most of the days of the week for the community.
Wow.
We love to serve our community. We are now a campus church with school as well,
Okay.
that we as church has initiated. And the school at the moment, well, another campus have also joined us. So actually Hills Adventist College has 2 campuses now. Previous campus was Castle Hill Adventist whatever school, I think it was called. And they just went from 1 to 6. And
Okay.
that campus still exists, but they have embraced our name, and we have sort of combined, and we have started a new campus, which is on Kellyville campus. And altogether, there's about 800 students at the moment.
Wow.
So
That's
there is
great.
a big community to minister.
Yeah.
There is a big community to both parents, but also there is a new sort of grown community around our church with thousands of new houses being built and so on.
Wow.
So
it's wide open.
It's a busy church.
Yeah.
It's a busy church, but
Sounds
it's
like you're
very
busy too.
rewarding.
Yeah.
And the church is filled with talented people. We have fantastic leadership who are not just, talking, but who are serving, who are contributing. And it's a joy. It's a huge privilege for me that they still want me to be their lead pastor. So I'm thankful for that.
Yeah, it's great to hear. And as far as I'm aware, that the Kellyville is the most open, friendly, welcoming church in all of Australia, but especially in the big Sydney area. And so yeah, if there are some people in the area who are listening, looking for a new church home or a more welcoming church home, what invitation or what would you like to share with them for a plug for Kellyville?
Look, I would say to them, like we say to everyone, we don't distinguish who is who and what is what. We say, you're welcome as you are. Come as you are. I believe that God created them for purpose, the way he created them. And he's rejoicing, seeing them using their spiritual gifts, regardless of where people are in the journey or in the way they identify themselves. God has a mission for them. They need to, the world reads Christians, not the Bible.
Yeah, right.
The world reads Christians, not the Bible. And that is important for us, the church, to show, because they read us. How do we treat people that are not always embraced, or maybe they live on the fringes of a society? Now, the things are changing, obviously, in Australia. I'm not involved. Sorry, Floyd, I'm not involved with your organization in any way. I'm too busy.
I understand.
I don't know even what is around us in Sydney or Australia. I don't know if we are the most friendly. I actually don't care where we are on the ladder. Right. What I do care is when the people come, they will feel this is my home. I'm welcome here. I can be myself. And not only that, I am gifted by God. And this church is a platform that I can use my gifts for God's glory.
Awesome. Yeah, that's wonderful to hear. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. That's where the rubber hits the road, is the local church, and taking care of the people that need it there in your area. So
and this goes back to what I said earlier. We don't have the answers to everything, and we don't have to answer everything. And I would definitely encourage pastors around the world to actually solve this problem in a practical way. And that is, don't get stuck in theology, because people are dying. They are being hurt,
exactly. Yeah,
get stuck in ministry, in pastoral ministry, and show these people love, and just hug them, just welcome them, and tell them, I'm hurting with you. I don't know necessarily everything. I can't say what is what, but one thing I know, God has invited me to show you God's love. And the world is waiting to see, because they read us. They read us more than the Bible. And Jesus says, this is how they will know. This is how they will know that you are my followers.
Exactly. Yes.
By your love.
Beautiful message, Pastor Martin. Thank you so much. I appreciate you and wish you blessings. And if I'm in Australia, in the Sydney area, I'm going to stop by, and I want to shake your hand and give you a hug in person.
Definitely. You're welcome to us, and it would be an honor and privilege to have you. And we might even invite you to our church lunch afterwards.
Well, thank you. That would be wonderful.
Well, thank you so much. And I do want to say to all our people in the community that you represent, a huge sorry for all the hurts that they have experienced from people, but above all from the church. I know that we don't treat our people the way they should be treated. Once upon a time, I read about the people who are going through hard times in life, times like maybe marriage breakup or some other stuff that the church is very nervous about it. And I read a comment that goes something like this: the church is the only institution in the world that shoots their own wounded soldiers. And when I read that hurt me, because I don't have this Adventist baggage. I have embraced Christianity. I believe that God has called us to reveal love, and not just, head knowledge, but actually heart knowledge. Yeah. And when you look around, even now, unfortunately, the world is there are several wars going on, but let's just take the war in Ukraine that we hear so much. When they have soldiers who are hurt, they don't go around shooting them. They pick them up, they carry them, they nurse them. And this is what I want our church to do. So to your community, I say sorry. If the church has hurt you, give us a try again. And please do not identify church with God. The love of God, we are just on a journey together. We are still very sinful, and we are still hurting each other. And so sorry for that. But to all the pastors, I just want to say, let's be the church that is actually nurturing and caring for the wounded people in our own, first of all, and then obviously in our community. So God bless you with what you're doing.
Amen.
I don't know much about it. Sorry, I'm maybe a little bit ignorant about it. But I do want to let you know that we love you, like we love everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Keep doing what you're doing. That was a beautiful sermon for the Sabbath coming up here. And so thank you so much. And we'll keep in touch. And,
God bless you, and greetings from Sydney, Australia.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Till later. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye.
So, welcome back, Michelle.
Thanks.
So we heard from Pastor Martin now about how the journey went in making Kellyville an affirming church, a welcoming church. And I was really taken with his stance on theology isn't that important. Don't necessarily throw the Bible text at me. What is important is caring about the people and being the picture of Christ that the people need to have in that community. And the story about you don't shoot your own soldiers, your own wounded people, you bring them into church, you nurture them if they're wounded, and you take care of them. That really impressed me with the story that he, shared with us. So tell me now, on a typical Sabbath, what is the queer community? Do they sit all in one little corner of the church, or
Some of them are
Because-
up front singing.
Really? Okay.
Yes. No, some of them are up front singing. We do church upside down. We start off with gathering together in the chapel at 10. So the program is not too dissimilar to many churches. We are typically enjoying fairly contemporary music. So we have a band, we have multiple singers. There'll be prayer, there'll be often a children's segment. We have an absolutely incredible children's ministries program at Kellyville. So there's often stuff going on up front for the kids. Sermons, sometimes we'll do things a bit differently, but yeah, the queer community who come along are involved. They're up there, they're doing things, they're sitting, they're chatting, they're connecting. So we do connect group time after the service. We'll have refreshments for a period, stand around and chat, tear ourselves away from standing around and chatting to actually sit down and do connect group time.
And is that like Sabbath school?
Yeah. So we call Sabbath School Connect Group. And some of the Connect groups will meet midweek as well. So they'll catch up quite a bit. They'll look for service opportunities to do with each other. We Connect Group is much more than just a Sabbath school, I guess. It's and many of the groups don't follow the official Sabbath school books. Many of us will follow Connect Group material that's prepared alongside the sermon. So we'll have listened to the sermon in the morning in the first program, and then we'll go and we'll discuss it and dig deeper into the Bible, into what was being discussed in those small groups.
Good.
So I would say that we probably do have most of our regular queer attenders attending one Connect Group, not quite all. Some don't hang around for Connect Group at all. Some of them will leave after the service. But often, like with many of us, busy lives, commitments elsewhere. So,
Right.
But we my husband and I are part of one of the Connect groups that is very, very welcoming. And so we enjoy having a really diverse range of people, diverse range of topics. It's really good.
Wow. Does sound very good. Australia is a huge place, a huge country, a huge island. And there are very few welcoming churches where a queer person can feel comfortable. I know I hear from a lot of parents of queer children. I hear from the actual LGBTQIA plus community. Everyone is looking for a church. Seems like, especially in Western Australia, there's a big void of not much to pick from there. And so since I've heard of Kellyville and heard about Kellyville, I post on the Facebook group always, hey, if you're looking for a church, go check out Kellyville. You'll feel welcome, and look up Michelle. She'll give you a hug and make you feel good.
Yeah.
So
I'm often lurking near the library, or I'm hiding with the kids in the kids area.
Okay.
Yes,
okay.
I'm around.
Cool. So tell me, for someone who doesn't know the Sydney area very well, where is Kellyville, like from downtown Sydney, from the Opera House? Everyone knows the Opera House, so let's go from there. How far up away, or north or south, or wherever is it from there?
We are out in the northwest of Sydney. So if you hopped in a car at the Opera House and got through the city traffic, you would then be driving, depending on whether it's peak hour or not, but somewhere between 40 and an hour to get out to us. We're not at all central Sydney. Yeah, we're right out in the northwest suburbs. Not too sort of, if if you find Parramatta on a map and Hornsby on a map, which is sort of the northwest point of the metro area, and you kind of draw lines together, you get vaguely near to where Kellyville is.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. But definitely worth the time, the drive, the whatever to get there. Sounds like. Yeah. Definitely. Definitely.
I guess one of the interesting parts about being an ally and being part of the queer community in Australia was the journey that we went down a few years back. I think we're 6 years this year. I think Joe and Dan might have mentioned it when you talked to them, the marriage equality plebiscite that we had to get through. That was a really, from I guess my point of view, sitting in a church community, but also sitting with a really diverse range of friends outside of church. Kellyville is amazing, but I will throw a but in there. It's still ultimately a community of humans who have a diverse range of opinions. I think we are, yes, we're a very welcoming community overall. The plebiscite, where for months same-sex marriage was debated backwards and forwards in all of the worst ways that you can imagine. That was a period of time that showed to me personally that there were definitely people in the community who are welcoming, but they're not affirming. But it's still, Kellyville is still a very special place in terms of the way that it will still be welcoming and people can come. And really. We're so happy to have all kinds of minority groups join us. The diversity is fantastic. But it's not a magical place. There are still people on a journey there themselves. Sure. And as an ally during the time of the plebiscite, I definitely felt just a tiny slice, I think, of what the queer community has had to deal with. Because ultimately, it's a choice for me to be an ally. It's not a part of, it's not my core identity that I have no choice over. I don't feel like it's much of a choice. I couldn't take being an ally away from my identity, but still, it is different. I've enjoyed a lot of privilege in my life, but the experience of debating with people and really having my Christianity questioned during that time and challenged was no fun at all. But as I said to many friends at the time who, people took themselves off social media because the debates and the things that were being said were just so incredibly hurtful. Yeah. And I completely understood that they needed to give themselves safety. I posted frequently on my Facebook. My Facebook is a safe place. I will be deleting things that I'm not happy with, but I will also be engaging in debates. And some of those debates were not pretty. But ultimately, I felt I could put myself out there because it's different for me. It's not, it's not my lived identity in the same way that it is for all of you who've been through so much in so many different ways. And it was just a little thing that I could do to try and change a few opinions, maybe. I'm not sure how many opinions I changed, but there are people at Kellyville who are not affirming, but they seem to still be welcoming and
and that's important. I mean, to allow other people to be who they are, even if you don't agree with them, I think is an important step. And I appreciate allies. I appreciate you doing the work, because you can have a voice where we can't have a voice, and you have a little bit more clout maybe than sometimes we do, because that's a queer person saying that, of course he's going to say that. But when an ally who's not that way says it, then Yeah, yeah. It sometimes is more meaningful, and I wish it wasn't that way, but
yeah, I agree. And I've been taking some of, I guess, my learning, like through the Building Bridges course that we had at Kellyville, taking some of my learning from that, some of what I've learned just in general in this process of allyship from a church point of view, and now I'm getting involved in that from my professional point of view. So we're working on improving diversity and inclusion within our profession across the country. And that's a very cool place to be. And again, I just being able to say, I have energy and interest and passion in this place. Point me at a problem and let me go for it.
Right. Yeah.
Tell me if I'm doing things wrong. I want to learn. But ultimately, yes, it's exciting to try and enact change in some way.
Yeah.
Trying to be better.
So Australia as a country, as a secular society, general society or whatever, is making pretty good progress with what's the rights and stuff.
Well, we achieved
you have World Gay Pride happening real soon, right?
I believe today is officially the start date. In fact,
the start of it, yeah.
17th. Yep, I think today is the start date of World Pride here in Sydney. We've got a long-standing tradition of the Mardi Gras parade here in Sydney. I'm not across all of the queer history of this country. We as a society, we absolutely still have problems with inclusion and things like that across both our LGBTQI population, our First Nations people. There's a lot of racism. There's still plenty of sexism and plenty of homophobia out there. But we're moving forward. We're moving forward, not backward. And a big step forward was the fact that more than 70% of the population said yes to equal marriage. And
awesome.
That was really fantastic.
Yeah,
it was a really great outcome.
Awesome. So what can Kinship do? I love these live things when the phone rings here on my side, but anyway, sorry. Okay. So what can Kinship do to help connect parents, allies, queer people, in Australia to move the needle a little bit farther on? Is it resources? Is it, what, does anything come to mind?
That's a really good question.
I didn't prepare you for that ahead of time.
No,
sorry.
You didn't. That's okay. I've dropped all kinds of things on you. I guess it's hard to say how much can be done grassroots level up. So it's tough because there aren't yet, I think, that many allies out there who are willing to ruffle feathers. And there's a lot of ability, I think, to just turn a blind eye, not go there, just keep the status quo. For a lot of really small churches across Australia, the local small town churches out there are incredibly small communities on the whole. And unless they have a young queer person in their congregation, they may not even stop and think twice about it. But I guess what you never know, of course, is there a young person growing up in that community who needs to hear that they are loved and that they're accepted just as they are? You just don't know. And that's hard. I think I don't know that there's any really quick fixes or easy fixes, but getting the fact that kinship exists out there, whether we can, I guess, look at who to engage at local churches to see, what can we do? Can we have local kinship members visit anywhere and just kind of exist for a couple of Sabbaths and get some conversations going? I don't know. I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
Question.
Well, I have one more bomb question for you that I didn't prepare you for, and you may not know the answer to this, but with Avondale, how would a queer person feel attending Avondale? Would they feel welcome, tolerated, hostile? And again, you may not know the answer, and that's okay.
No. I don't think I could say. I never attended Avondale College myself. Right. I went to Avondale High School, not the college, because of the journey I was on overall. Avondale College did not come on my radar as a possibility at all, in spite of the fact my dad taught there. There are definitely graduates coming out of courses who are inclusive in their theology, definitely, and affirming. Good. But I think I don't think I've seen enough of a cross-section to really be able to say what life is like on the campus these days.
Right.
I don't know if they even have any kind of a Queer Student Connect kind of a program. I hope they do.
Yeah. I haven't heard of one, but
yeah. No, I'm not sure.
Yeah, maybe that's something I need to work on and try to find out and see what I can determine from my sources there. So yeah. Good.
Yeah.
So it's been a pleasure talking to you. Do you want to put one more plug in, a final plug for Kellyville, or anything, or just advice for queer youth?
No, I think the main thing about Kellyville is to know that we do things upside down. So if you want to come to Kellyville, don't rock up at 11. You will enjoy nice refreshments and some small group connection time, but if you rock up at 11, you've missed some of the best bit. So come find us at 10. Our website is out there, kellyville.church. Check us out. And we do church online. So since the pandemic, we established incredible media ministry. So you can follow us on Facebook, find us on YouTube, enjoy our services from anywhere you're sitting in the world, whether you do it live, whatever the time difference might be, or if you just catch up later. Awesome. We have digital sort of pastory people part of that community. So we've got regular people tuning in from other parts of the world to our live feed. So, even if you just want to connect virtually because you're not in Sydney, feel free to join us online in our online community. There's a community Facebook group that you can join if you really want to connect with us that way. But yeah, if you're ever in Sydney, get yourself out to Kellyville. If you're not sure how to get to us and you're not going to have a car, just reach out on Kinship because there are a number of us that go to Kellyville. So I'm sure we can pick you up from a local train station or a bus stop or something to help you get there. We'd love to have you.
Nice. Great. Well, thank you again, Michelle. It's been a pleasure. And hopefully we will keep in contact and I'll look for the updates on Kellyville, and I'll try to join online. I'll look and see when Sydney time versus Dallas, Texas time, and and
I can tell you
had a little chart there.
Yep. So 10 a.m. our time on a Sabbath is 5 p.m. Friday for Texas. So work back from there if you want. Although we do daylight savings, so the clocks will change in April, and it'll all be different.
Yeah. Same here, exactly.
Fun time.
But yeah, great.
So if you want, you can open Sabbath with us.
That's perfect. Yes. We'll do that. Well, thanks everyone for sharing with us today. Thank you, Michelle. We hope that today's podcast was interesting and has given our listeners some things to think about and a sense of encouragement that the church can be a safe place for all of us, just finding the right church. So Seventh-day Adventist Kinship is the only LGBTQIA plus affirming community for current and former Adventists, and we welcome not only the Rainbow Alphabet members, but also parents and family members who want to learn more about how to support their loved ones, and allies, supportive allies who stand with us to make a difference in our church and in our world. You can check us out on the web, sdakinship.org, or follow us on social media at SDA Kinship. And if you have any questions or comments for Michelle or for me, you can always email me at info@sdakinship.org, and I'll be happy to forward those on to Michelle. And we look forward to having you with us on the next podcast release. Take care and know that God loves you unconditionally. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.